from the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Welcome to Pathways to Pediatrics, a specialist series of our podcast. I'm Dr. Joanna Parga-Belinkie.
And I'm Dr. David Hill. In Pathways to Pediatrics, we get to meet people in our profession and find out how they got to and through pediatrics.
So I grew up on Long Island in a town called Syosset, and my mother used to commute a full 4 miles to go to work in a neighboring town called Oyster Bay. Eventually, my parents moved there, and when I would visit there, there was this cute pediatric practice in a blue house with a wraparound porch.
Now, Joanna, I haven't been to your parents' house, but I read this article in the New Yorker about a practice that I think is really close to where you grew up. It's owned by Dr. Greg Gulbransen. Did you see him when you were a kid?
No, I saw Dr. Toback in Syosset until I was in my mid-20s and he retired. What did you learn about Dr. Gulbransen, though, when you read about him?
A lot. He has now around 30 years of experience being a pediatrician, but he's also an advocate and an artist with a passion for documentary photography. But I'd rather let him tell us himself because he is on the podcast with us today. Dr. Gulbransen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Love being here.
Greg, as I mentioned, you own a private practice that I always mistake for a cozy home. What's it like inside your clinic?
It is exactly what it looks like on the outside, and that's the idea. It's certainly a full-on medical practice, but make it a little bit more cozy because that just fits into that community, and it works very well. It's beautiful. There's 5 exam rooms, and it's 2 floors. First floor is really for the patients. Second floor is administration, and we get a lot done in there. It's open 7 days a week, every day of the year.
And did you always know that you were going to be a general pediatrician when you were going through your training?
So, no, I didn't. Mom and Dad were always very big into children and advocacy work. And I was a school teacher in a prep school in New York. And I decided, I wanted to become a physician. That's really wanted to do. So when I went to medical school, I decided after a while, I wanted to do this, that, and the other thing. And I said, no, it's just, that's it. We're going right down the same path as my parents. And I ended up doing pediatrics really because of a lot of the reasons most of us go into what we go into, whatever the field is. I admired some people and I looked up to them that I saw during my rotations. And I said, I really like what they're doing. I like who they are. I can relate to them. I'm going to go down this path. And I love kids.
Now, Greg, you have 3 children, and one of them died at age 2. This death was a tragedy that happened in your own driveway. You've spoken about it many times before, and we don't want to re-traumatize you in the telling. So please defer if you'd rather. But if you're willing, can you tell us about Cameron?
So Cameron was 2 at the time, very adventurous, outgoing, active kid. And he, was just like a wild guy. He was a lot wilder than my wife and I. He's just interesting. And he and I guess, in a way, we sort of had a mission together. And his life can't be measured in its quantity, but it certainly can be measured in its quality. Because as a result of the accident where I backed over and killed him accidentally, but I take full responsibility, we were actually able to make the world a safer place for families, particularly children. So this accident happened on a Saturday night in New York. Monday morning was the annual meeting in Boston. And it was one of the first things they mentioned. They said, by the way, one of the pediatricians just lost his son. He backed over and killed his 2-year-old. So, it became a national story overnight, and I had to deal with it.
I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. But this tragic accident fueled your advocacy. Can you tell us about the Cameron Gulbransen Kids Transportation Safety Act?
So the bill, the Cameron Gulbransen Kids Transportation Safety Act, came as a result of the advocacy work that I did, along with other people. No one does anything that alone. And with Hillary Clinton, it was a bipartisan bill. It was a real hard fight. And we really just threw it all out there. It was really quite exhausting. I went to Washington quite a few times to testify here and there. It got pretty mean. It was basically going up against the whole car industry, which is quite a machine. And it took about 8 years. And eventually there was a lawsuit. And there's a big pro bono firm down in Washington. And they said, we'll do this case. It's going to be you, along with other families on the list, but it had to be my name first because it was in New York State. We had Hillary Clinton here. And the courts were favorable with these kind of issues. And eventually they said, it looks like, you're going to lose and the whole thing's get thrown out. And I said, no, I'm not going to lose. So you just don't lose, right? It's just, we're not losers here. It's about children and it's got to happen. And it was a matter of timing. It was really down to the last 72 hours where the Department of Transportation ended up getting in trouble with another issue. And we were suing them. And when that last 72 hours came, they actually called my office in Oyster Bay. And they conceded and they said, you know what? We're going to take a big hit next week. There's going to be a lot of committee meetings and we're going to look quite bad in front of Washington, D.C. So we're going to switch and we're going to take your side on the lawsuit. So we're sorry that this happened and we agree with you and we'll take your side, and boop, it was done. That was quite a phone call. So that's when you won.
That's an incredible accomplishment. Can you tell us what the law does to protect kids?
The law said that vehicles, it's 10,000 pounds or under, except for motorcycles, have to have a camera facing rearwards that works very well when the car shifted into reverse. It has to be there. Any car, anywhere. And now the automobile industry didn't want that because they wanted to keep it as an expensive luxury item, right? Add it onto your navigation. But due to the economics of scale, when you put it in every single car, the numbers come way, way down. So the price of cars really didn't go up by much. And that's what essentially the law ended up doing. It took a long time, about a dozen years, I think.
Wow. That is a long haul, but I get the sense you're not the kind of person who gives up. Now, Greg, I want to switch to photography here for a second. I love taking amateur photographs of birds and reptiles, and I'll send these to friends like Joanna. But you used to shoot wildlife and fashion, and then you got into photographing people who were living in high-risk situations, those involved in gangs and victims of substance use and gun violence. How did you connect with these individuals, and when do you photograph them?
So it's all really about pediatrics because it's interesting. As this lawsuit was coming and I was going to lose, I said to one of my brothers, look, get me a long lens. I'm going to start walking the beaches in the ocean here in Jones Beach, and I'm going to start photographing. I got to sort of deal with the stress. So I would walk along the ocean beaches in the wintertime and look for snowy owls and things like that. And thinking, pediatricians, we really don't lose when it comes to children. It wasn't going to make sense that I was going to lose. So eventually I did that and then ultimately wanted to learn more about lighting and taking different pictures. So I photographed for the European versions of Elle, Marie Claire, Harper's Bazaar, and that was fun, but you're dealing with a big crew and models, and it really wasn't getting to the soul of somebody. So I noticed as doctors, we really do get into their soul. We listen to them and we enjoy them. And I wasn't connecting with the camera the way I was connecting in the office. So I decided, let's photograph people. My photography today is documentary photography that relates to the health and well-being of youth in America. So I photograph 3 topics: gun violence, number 1 killer. It used to be vehicles, and then the cameras came out, so that's number 2. Now it's guns. So I went to guns. Then I go to poverty. I photograph in Appalachia, a beautiful family in West Virginia. And then I also do this fentanyl epidemic. That goal was to really work with the addicts and take care of them and nourish them and help them, as you saw in the article, but also to tell their story. So that's my goal with the camera, get into deep places. How do I get to those places? With the same skills that we as pediatricians, 67,000 of us in the American Academy? The same skills that we use when we walk into the exam room and look at our patients and listen to them and care for them. I use the same exact skills with the camera in these places.
And I know there are several people that you followed very closely through this journey. Is there one that you can give us an example of?
So when I went to the Bronx to look for some documentary photography, I ended up connecting with groups of kids that were riding bicycles, not motorcycles and not quads. There's plenty enough of those guys, but these kids ride bicycles, and they actually do it in large groups. There was a leader, there was a dad who I'm very close with to this day. And the motto of his spirit, basically it was bikes up, guns down. And stay out of the gangs, stay off the street corner, let's ride. When you have free time, let's ride. And they do this seriously. So I was documenting them, and during that time, one of the riders was shot, and his name was Malik. So I wanted to tell Malik's story. And there he was in his wheelchair. He's paralyzed from mid-thoracic down. He's really quite stiff. His body's very atrophied. And I decided that he had a story. And when I went into the apartment and met him, it turns out 5 men in this one apartment have been shot and survived. The brother, the father, the uncle, and the grandfather. And it was just tragic. But he really let me into his world. And I really do help Malik a lot.
Greg, we talk on this podcast about trauma-informed care, and having lived through a terrible trauma and photographed individuals who've lived through traumas, is this something you intentionally practice with families you see in clinic?
Oh, that's a tough question. I am very good at dealing with issues when parents are either about to lose a child or a very sick child, or they lost a child. I mean, we all have practices where, unfortunately, children do pass away from a variety of means. So I'm very good in that. People do seek me out for that stuff. But I think what happens is when you lose a child, you can go in a couple of different directions. Fortunately, I was given coping skills through my parents, but also during residency when you're watching the fellows and the attendings behave during very difficult circumstances. I did it for 4 years at North Shore Manhasset. You learn how to cope during all sorts of adverse circumstances. And I use those skills to sort of say, I'm going to channel my energy into policy change instead of suicide, alcoholism, substance abuse, divorce, all these things. And I was lucky, but I do attribute a lot of those coping skills to what I've learned from fellow pediatricians. And I want to thank everyone for that.
And how do you tell parents to parent after their child has died? Because I struggle with this. I work in an ICU and, we do a lot of memory making if we know that a baby's going to die. But then I am often at a loss for words to tell them how to parent after that.
Yeah, that's hard. And each one is different. I lost a brother to Coxsackie virus B, myocarditis. The generation before that lost someone to appendicitis. And now we're 3 in a row. So let's hope that curse ends. But it's always individual. There's no one recipe, and we do know that. You just listen a lot. Probably the most important thing you're doing is providing yourself as a role model so they can watch you and see how you're doing. And you talk to them. You make sure they have your number. You call them. You check in on them. You take walks with them. You want to be the one as a doctor who endures. You want to be the one that sticks around.
Well, Greg, speaking of sticking around, you have had a long and accomplished career practicing pediatrics. And we always like to ask our guests, what is the one thing you love about being a pediatrician?
Well, I just love kids, right? But if you think about it, it's a little corny, right? We are, 67,000 of us in this country, right? Something like that. And for the most part, we don't know each other. We hear about each other. We listen to each other. We read each other's papers. Sometimes we disagree. We practice medicine a little differently based on the systems that we came from. But we all have this one thing in common, and that is that we love children. And we really kick you-know-what. I mean, I'm going to say it. We kick ass. And it's just such a great thing to be a part of that. When you go in the office, you're the tree, but there's a big forest that you're working with. And it's a lot of fun. It's a very beautiful thing. I personally made an observation within the last year, because I've been doing this almost 30 years. And with me, I've noticed 3 stages. And I think that a lot of pediatricians go through this. And the first stage is you get out of residency and you need the patience, right? You convince yourself you're going to change the world. You're going to do this bang, 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 bang. And you're going to just build it, and you're going to get your kids in school and all this kind of stuff. And whatever it is that you want to do, that you do. And then you kind of burn out and you're like, wow, there's an epiphany. The patients need me. Calm down. And that's really okay, but it's not good enough. It's the third stage, another 10 years down the road. You're about 20-something years in and you realize, you know what? You're the airplane, you're at altitude, you're at 30,000 feet when the pilot says, take off your seatbelt. You're really cruising, and then you realize we all need each other equally. And that's really where I'm at. And I don't mind going to work. Today is the 28th day straight in a row I've opened my office. I'm actually not there this afternoon because I'm doing this, but it's really okay. I mean, I do have a day off. But we really do need each other, and it's really a very lucky thing that we have these children and these families. So I'm very grateful because for the most part, it's really just a lot of fun. It really is. Certainly it has its moments, but they're fun too.
Well, Dr. Greg Gulbransen, we could chat with you all day about all the amazing work you do, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit of your path through pediatrics.
Well, thank you for having me. It's fun.
To listen to more Pathways to Pediatrics, visit our website at aap.org/podcast.
Well, that's it for today's episode. If you like Pediatrics on Call, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and help us spread the word. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Pediatrics on Call.
Pediatrics on Call is a production of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Our producers and editors are Ann Johnsos and Claire Keating. Our audio engineer is Doug Nagel. Joe Puskars is our associate producer, and Susan Martin is our executive producer. Our theme music was composed by Matthew Simonson. Join us next week when we'll discuss screening for mental health, emotional, and behavioral problems.
We'll talk to the author of a new clinical report, Dr. Carol Weitzman. I'm Dr. David Hill.
And I'm Dr. Joanna Parga-Belinkie. Thanks for listening.